Donna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Scott. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. Your company is built upon a powerful and completely unique concept that we need to adopt a C-suite mentality to lead our lives so we can have more purpose, planning, and power. How did you make this awesome connection, and what is the Me Suite mindset?
Okay, let me break it down. And I'll start with an adage that I love, which is knowing an acronym does not make you smart, but not knowing it can make you feel silly. So I'll first start with what is a C-suite, in case some of the listeners haven't heard that term. A C-suite is the group of leaders inside a company that are in the big office on the top floor. And C-suite means chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief marketing officer. So chief is the C. And the C-suite is that group that come together, whatever, monthly, quarterly, et cetera, to make big decisions about how the company is run. So my company, called the Me Suite, is a play on C-suite. And the concept is that we should be running our own personal lives with the same discipline that C-suites are running and leading the companies that we most admire. Because what those C-suite leaders do every day is only three things at the core. They marshal the core values of the company. They keep the day-to-day operations running smoothly. And they keep that company relevant for all the changes that are going to be happening in the future. And why are we not doing that in our own lives? We need to know our own core values and make decisions aligned to them. We need to keep our own day-to-day running smoothly, now more than ever, I would say. And we need to, as individuals, stay fresh and relevant for the future that we want to live in. So that was the birth of the concept, the Me Suite, playing on what all we can be learning from the disciplines of C-suite leaders.
That's great. I think that's only someone who has experience in the arts would think of connecting.
Yes, so I have been what I jokingly call deep undercover in corporate America for 20 years, but I did spend my 20s as a professional actor and did a lot of writing and producing during that time. So I hope that some of that skill and inspiration came to the creation of the Me Suite, but it's been a wonderful ride here in 2020, although difficult for a lot of people doing career coaching with the Me Suite. It's just a really difficult time.
Right. And you said you collaborated with George Lucas, right?
I did. Would this man remember me? I don't know. But I did have a chance to work with George Lucas in 1993 and 4 on a movie called Radioland Murders. And I hope he's not offended, but don't watch it if you're tired because you might fall asleep. It was supposed to be a comedy. It's not terribly funny, but it did, come to the regular movie theater. It was a chance for George Lucas to test some of his special effects technologies to get ready for all the Star Wars prequels that later came out. And an amazing cast. I mean, I had a chance to at least walk around Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future and George Burns, you may remember, he's now passed away, but a famous comedian, Mary Stuart Masterson from Fried Green Tomatoes, and other people like that were in the movie because everybody wanted to work with George Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
So
and Christopher Lloyd from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Mr. Tabor.
Oh, that's exactly right. Yes, you're exactly right. So it was a fabulous, amazing experience to be around that amount of talent. And, but I don't think that any of them will remember who I am.
You have a beautiful blog post about learning from your role model about decision-making. Would you share that story with us?
Okay. Yeah. So you've picked up on a story, that's about my dad. So that's a story about decision-making. It's about my dad. I would say that I had to learn a lot of lessons the hard way about this concept of what people call work-life balance or work-life integration. I hate both of those terms, by the way. I think they're false and lies. I do believe in a concept that you have a life, and underneath that are all the decisions you make to be in service of that life that you want to have, and work is an incredibly important decision. And so what I wrote that blog about was an experience with my father that helped illuminate to me that work-life balance is a lie. And it was the fact that my father had been diagnosed with esophageal cancer, which is a very, unfortunately, high trending cancer among men in the United States, increasing in incidence, and the prognosis is poor. And he was diagnosed with that, and he'd given about a 10% chance of making it about a year. And we got very lucky. He made it 7 more really good years, not just years, but good ones. We got
Mm.
very, very fortunate. But in that process, he had a chance to do a lot of self-reflection, and he made decisions about what people he wanted to surround himself with in his life because he knew he had limited time. He made decisions about just what was important and how he was going to prioritize activities that he got involved in. And I just, from watching him live a life that he knew was going to be short, I learned a lot about putting things more in perspective.
Mm.
And I believe I used to talk to this a lot with my direct reports that I don't think that I was a terribly wonderful boss to work for at times earlier in my career. And then after I had this experience with him, I certainly got better
Mm.
because I think it just made me more human.
That's great. Let's shift gears a bit to core values. How does
Mhm.
one identify his or her core values, and what are the benefits?
Yeah. So one of the foundational tenets of the Me Suite, as I mentioned, is marshaling your life according to your core values, making decisions that are always filtered by them. So I love that you ask, well, what are they and how do
Hmm.
you get them? And the truth is, from all the people that I interview, every interview in my podcast starts with, what are your core values? Because I believe it's the foundation of everything, but everybody comes at it differently, which I find fascinating.
Mm.
Mine are curiosity, freedom, and respect. And curiosity meaning constantly learning, trying new things, asking lots of questions, wanting to see something, understand it from another person's point of view. Freedom is not feeling trapped and having choices. And respect is all about equity and inclusion. Um, and I just came up with those because they were, I just knew it. I don't have an elegant way to say it. I just knew that that's what they were. And I've learned from other people, other techniques, because my answer was not terribly helpful. Oh, I just knew what they were. Other techniques I've heard people use that I've interviewed, some people take Post-it notes and they just start to write down adjectives, or forget it. It doesn't even have to be an adjective. It can be a phrase. It can be an experience. And they write them on Post-it notes and they throw them down on a table, and then they start to cluster them and look for synonyms and themes, and then filter down to their core list. I recommend 3 to 5 of what truly represents the behaviors that they value and that they want to live their life through and expect in others. I have other people that have written down what they think theirs were, and then they go ask a friend. So I would write down mine and I would keep them private, and then I would go to Scott and I would say, Scott, you've known me for 15 years. What do you think would be on my core values list? And then you have your friends write it, and then you look for the similarities and differences,
Hmm.
because the similarities are probably what is really true and your true core values, not your aspirations. Because
Right.
core values are how you already are showing up and behaving, not how you wish you were behaving.
Mm.
So I found that little trick to be awesome that I've learned from some of my listeners about how they go about doing it. And then the third trick I've learned from listeners of how do you identify your core values is thinking the opposite. So if you're really struggling with, well, is it curiosity, freedom, and respect? You ask, what drives me nuts? What do
Mm.
I really find distasteful?
Right.
Where can I just not get through it if that thing is existing? And if, for example, you were to say dishonesty, then you know your core value is honesty
Right.
or transparency or truthfulness or something like that.
Hmm.
So those are some tricks. I wish that it was a simpler, more direct single solution, but I have found that it varies for people.
Mm. And some of those definitions and delineations you gave are very helpful.
Oh, great.
Do you find, we're talking about companies and their mission statements and core values, and I know even in your podcast you talk a lot about, you even compared different companies' core
Mm.
values, Starbucks and Tesla and BMW. How much do they take into account those mission statements and those purpose in all of the work that they do? I kind of always assume that it's sort of like it's written on the wall and it's
Oh,
there
yeah.
nice, and and one of those where it's like you write it to be read and not so much to be followed.
Yeah. I love this question, especially now. It is for many, for some, a delicate work environment in the time of COVID. And so some people may feel a little insecure in a current job. They might have had an offer that got rescinded. It's just an unstable time. And so for anyone that might be listening that's thinking that they need to be looking for a new position, should I stay in the one that I'm in? I love to challenge people to say, what are your core values? And let that help drive the types of companies that you look for. Not just what are the core values on a poster in the break room, like you said, because that
Right.
absolutely exists, I'm sure, in many, many places. But where are there companies that are actually living and visibly behaving aligned to their core values? And let me give you a real example that happened just yesterday, now that I think about it. Old Navy, the clothing store. Old Navy announced yesterday that they are instituting paid time off for employees to go vote.
Hmm.
That costs them money,
Right.
but it was aligned to not all of their core values. A lot of companies have about six, but it's aligned to a core value of respect for the individual and giving people the freedom to make the right decision, which is to make your voice heard. They're not telling you how to vote,
Right.
but they're giving you the free space to go vote. And they're trying to take away as many variables as possible that prevent you from exercising your voice.
Hmm.
That is an example, I believe, of a company that doesn't just have core values on a poster, but it's actually translating into the behavior. Um, and another one, Starbucks last year in 2019 had a very negative experience where they had a staff member in one of the Starbucks stores that called the police on some African American visitors who were in the store. And that went against a Starbucks core value of a sense of welcome and belonging.
Right.
And so the CEO went very public with that experience and said, this is not who we are, and we have to change. And I'm sure there were all kinds of personnel reprimands that happened, and there were also new trainings and new expectations of what does it mean to be a Starbucks employee, and how do I catch you demonstrating behaviors and core values around a sense of welcome and belonging. So it was another example of actually a core value that may have only been sort of on a poster, and when it was violated, the CEO went very public, very, very quickly and owned it and said, that is not who I will allow us to be.
So really, that would require the leadership to have the empathy,
Mm,
because we hear a lot of stories in the news of the
hmm.
PR that goes horribly wrong, with the airlines and
Yeah.
events that happen, and that people respond and double down the
Hmm.
opposite way that they really should.
Yeah.
So have you found that empathy is increasing or decreasing now in the corporate world?
Yeah. I want to say that I think it's increasing. I don't really know the exact true scientific definition of the word empathy. My assumption is that a real true definition of empathy is that you are feeling what the other person is feeling. I don't believe we're there yet at all.
Hmm.
I do believe that we are at heightened awareness
We
and
know
we're
what to
getting
say.
better.
Right.
Yeah, we're getting better at understanding. We're getting better at listening. But the empathy part of I'm really feeling what you're feeling, we've got a long, long way to go before that ever happens.
Hmm. I first had an experience with that in my music therapy internship. I was
Oh,
at a psychiatric hospital
uh-huh.
working as a intern for music therapy. And there was
Mm-hmm.
a client I was working, a patient I was working with that was having a lot of difficulties, with being very paranoid and having a lot of different ideas that weren't helping him. And when I tried to argue with him, because he was saying these, far out things, it
Mm-hmm.
was just get worse and worse, and more and more
Mm.
argument. So my supervisor was just saying, well, you don't want to get in an argument with him about, that doesn't make sense. Just say, well, it sounds like you're having a tough time at night. So
Oh,
here are some things we can do, to immediately focus on that solution.
oh, I see.
So,
Yeah, I love that you brought up the music therapy. I've only done that one time.
hmm,
And interestingly enough, it was New Year's Eve this year.
wow.
Yeah, so it's real recent. I've only done it one time, but it was also really, really recent. I
Hmm.
thought it very, very powerful.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I was fascinated to learn that you had done that as a career.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There's an immediacy to music making that you can,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned so much with facilitating a group, with being able to, this side needs a little bit more support and these guys are carrying it. And now I can
Mm-hmm.
highlight this and take a step back, and I'm not standing in the middle of the circle now, I'm moving back, and that's progress for the
Mm-hmm.
group, and just a lot of things like that. And, a lot of times older folks that I speak with, they talk about how, the kids now have a lack of those soft skills, where you're not looking someone in the eye, you're not being able to work that room where you can say, well, this is the leader and this is the
Mm-hmm.
person that's, supposed to be the leader, but this guy, this lady is in charge. So
Mm-hmm.
good. Now, how do we build our own board of directors?
Yeah. So this is another example, I think, of where I'll give a little bit of a definition in case it's a term that might be new to some of the listeners. If you think about any company that you know the name of, any company, they have a board of directors. And the board of directors is basically who the CEO reports to. And their job is to be at a checkpoint that the company is going in the direction that it's supposed to be going based on the commitments that it's making to shareholders. So this is most common in public companies that are on the stock market, but it could also be true for private companies, of course, and for not-for-profits like your local theater or your local church would have boards of directors. So I have a strong passion around the concept of, just like C-suites and me-suites, we as individuals also need our own personal board of directors. And that doesn't mean that 12 people sit around a stuffy conference table every quarter and talk about you with you in the room. That's not what it means. What it does mean is think about 3 or 4 people that you need to be bringing into your life to achieve the goal that you have set for yourself. And let me give you an example. Uh, Podcasting. I'll use me as an example. When I launched podcasting, I assembled a board of directors
Hmm.
to do that. And I decided to make it 3 people. And one of the members on my board of directors was a dear, dear friend. And her job was to give me feedback on whether or not I was sounding and showing up authentic in my
Mhm.
podcasting. Did she think I was putting on airs? Did she think I was being too stuffy? Did she think I was being too self-conscious? Right? Because she knew me and she
Hmm.
could play that role, and I trusted her to give feedback in my best interest. However, the other 2 people on my podcast, on my board of directors for the podcast goal, had nothing to do with me personally.
Hmm.
One of them was a podcast expert that I had never met. And I deliberately asked him to come on and play that role because he had expertise that I needed. And it was a way for me to get feedback in a very constructive, focused, professional manner. And everybody loves to have their advice asked for.
Sure.
And so he agreed. And then the third person I had was more on the business side of helping me shape my business when I left my corporate world after 20 years and moved into being a business owner. So again, an outside person that I wanted some outside expertise on. So I encourage people to think about what is a goal, or 1 or 2 or 3 goals that you're really trying to achieve, and who in your life can you surround yourself with. Sometimes you need somebody to tell you the baby's ugly. Sometimes you need a cheerleader to pump you up because you're feeling a little blue. But more often, you need an outside person to give you some expertise. And thinking about it as a personal board of directors is a powerful concept. and everybody loves to be asked their advice. So if you're feeling shy about it, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the worst thing that can happen is the person says no, and then you just move on.
I know that you said some stuff about networking that I really like too,
Hmm.
in terms of that people want to help if you ask them
Hmm.
the right questions. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a mantra that I have. If I ever get a tattoo, my tattoo is going to say that options are power. And by that, I mean, when people are stressed and they feel hopeless and there's a lot of anxiety and they just feel like things are out of their control, it's often because they feel trapped and they don't have options that they feel in control of and can make different choices. And one of the ways to build options in our lives and give us more choices is to think about our networks of people. Who are the people that you are going to be bringing into your life? And honestly, who are the people that you may need to shed
Hmm.
because they aren't in service of what you're trying to get accomplished and they don't have your best interests in mind?
Hmm.
Um, and networks could be what I mentioned before, the close buddies that are willing to tell you your baby's ugly. Networks could be people that are on your board of directors. And networks could be thinking about people that you want to be supporting and feeding in a mutual respectful way, like you and me right now, Scott, right?
Hmm.
We are both we're podcasters in this podcasting land. We have a common interest in helping people and in sharing experiences and connecting dots. And so I do encourage people to think very strategically about your networks of acquaintances and people close to you. Who should you be surrounding yourself with, and who should you be shedding? That's the ugly question, but it needs to be asked.
You're right. In your podcast, you said that you had 4 points to your framework for giving you more options.
Mm-hmm.
You gave us one. You're holding
Yeah.
back on us.
Am I holding back? Yeah. No, I'll
What are you
share all
keeping from
three.
us? Yeah.
I'll share all three. So the first one was networks, right? And thinking strategically about your network. The second one is your skills. And I'm going to throw out an SAT word here, fungible. Uh,
Mm.
Thinking fungibly about your skills. And by that, I mean, I find that people get so narrow in defining what they can do and what their area of expertise is that they're really missing an opportunity to present their job prospects in a much broader way. This is easy if I give an example. If somebody knows that they're an accountant and they're really good at accounting and they really feel stuck and they want a different type of a job, if you only think of yourself as an accountant and you think, I can only work in an accounting firm, you're not thinking fungibly about your skill set.
Mm.
If you are an accountant and you've been good at it, I would argue a fungible way, a flexible, broad way to think about your skill set is that you know how to solve puzzles. You know how to make order out of chaos. You can do diagnostics. You're almost like a treasure hunter
Right.
if you're an accountant. And I'm sure you are really good at paying attention to details.
Mm.
And there are lots of other types of jobs that would require those types of skills, not just in accounting. So one way I say that options are power. How do you build options? One is that you're thinking differently about your network, very strategically about your network, thinking fungibly about your skills. The third one is your health. We cannot always control elements of our health, that is for sure, but control the things you can and be disciplined about doing it. Because if you are losing the grip on your health, your options are limited in what you can do. So control the controllables. And then the fourth one is around finances. And I don't mean go out and make a bunch of money. What I mean by finances as a way to build options for yourself. What I mean is be knowledgeable. So if you are going to make a home purchase, be knowledgeable about the total cost of ownership of that home. It's not just your mortgage. It's not just your ability to write off some interest on your taxes. It's the total cost of owning the home and all of the maintenance around it and all of the insurance fees, and being very knowledgeable about the likelihood that this home would even appreciate if you wanted to sell it as an investment. So it's not about I'm not saying finances as accumulate as much money as you possibly can. I'm saying be as knowledgeable as you can about the decisions and the trade-offs that you're making. And sometimes all of these things, whether it's networking, skills, health, and finances, in some cases, you will need to go outside. I would advise you to go outside and ask for some external advice. I do like to lean on experts.
Mm.
And I'm not an expert in all four of those areas. And so I lean outside for advice a lot.
I can hear the career coach in you too, as well, of having people describe their occupation as in a fungible way with the skills, because you
Yeah.
took that accountant and gave them, 6 or 7 more possibilities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And imagine how different that resume would look
Mm.
if the accountant was thinking about themselves in that different light.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very motivating and energizing and kind of self-affirming, right? That you start to realize, you know what, I am helpful in lots
Sure.
and lots of situations.
Is career coaching blossoming now because of the pandemic?
Yeah, it's interesting. Career coaching for many, many years has been remote via video camera.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, it wasn't an industry that got disrupted by the inability to travel and inability to be in person. But what has really changed is sometimes the question. I think people are doing a lot more self-reflection now
Yeah.
and a lot more introspection of, is this worth it? Is this really what I want? I was living in town to be closer to my job, but I don't need to live in town anymore. Do I want to think differently about the community that I want to live in? And certainly people have had some very, very negative, horrible things happen, around uh, health impacts with COVID itself, or feeling that their job's at risk if they haven't already lost it. So there's a lot of coaching around that too, with people making career shifts, either proactively or reactively.
I love the intersection of creativity and business, and you talk a lot about improv and using
Yeah.
different ways of improv. I'd love to hear about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would love to talk to you on a similar note about all the music angles that we could play here.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent the first 20s, in my 20s, I spent as a professional actor before I went into corporate land, and have an enormous appreciation for all of the skills that you learn in a theater that are relevant in business. And I'm sure you have many from music, and I'm sure advanced athletes have it for sports. I find that there's a lot of dots to connect here.
Sure.
But specific to theater, there's a lot of rehearsal, and we call it rehearsal, but it's practice that goes into anything that you do theatrically. And I think a lot of times people think about improv as just off the cuff. And Robin Williams was just good on his feet. Or some of you may know Wayne Brady. He's one of my favorite improv actors today. I just think he's an absolute genius. He makes it look easy because he is so trained.
Mm-hmm.
And
Whose line
so
it is it anyway, right? Whose line?
exactly.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
show.
yeah, the guy from Whose Line Is It Anyway,
Yeah.
just cannot get enough of him. And but what he's doing is absolute genius, and it is well practiced.
Mm.
But there's this quotation from Martha Graham. It's attributed to her. She was a dancer back in the day, classically trained dancer, and she said that only through 20 years of rigorous training can I be spontaneous as a
Mm.
dancer. And that's what improv is about. It's you're rehearsing and you're practicing enough so that you can be flexible in the moment. It's just what LeBron James does in basketball. He is so practiced that he can improvise on the court
Right.
and make it look easy and natural. He doesn't know where the ball's going to go at any moment. You can't practice that. But because you're doing the drills and you're getting all the muscle memory, and you're rehearsing and rehearsing, you can be resilient and flexible in the moment. And that's what improv does in acting. It's what training does with athletes. It's what practice does with musicians.
Mm.
But in the workplace, we use improv a lot because it helps people get comfortable on their feet. especially when they're presenting. Not a lot of people are comfortable with that. You're not quite sure what question's going to get asked. You're afraid to give the presentation. What if my projector doesn't work? And you're just working through all those what if scenarios because if you rehearse it, you won't be surprised when it happens.
Right.
And I encourage encourage your kids to go to improv classes, take some yourself. It is just it's fun, number one. But number two, it's a life skill.
Isn't it creativity and critical thinking that are two of the most in demand characteristics for LinkedIn jobs?
Ooh, I love this because I think you're right. And I think it's driven by the fact that we're really trying to find in all jobs. I believe every company today is a digital business because every company has been impacted by digital technology. Full
Okay.
stop. Every business. I mean, even a restaurant with food has been impacted by digital technology. And because of that, you've got machines and digital technology doing things that are automated, and that's putting more pressure on these jobs you're seeing on LinkedIn, requiring creativity,
Mhm.
because that's where the human plays, because only the human can play there.
Right.
So what I think you're seeing in a lot of the LinkedIn job descriptions are things that really only the human can do.
Right.
And I'm even seeing it now in some academic institutions. They're having more and more courses around what is the role of the human at the intersection of technology.
Yep.
So I think that that's a very, very important observation.
Hmm. Interesting. I wanted to ask you about critical thinking. It seems like you feel very strongly about the future of critical thinking and how it
Mhm.
plays into why is critical thinking so vital for the future?
My definition of critical thinking is starting with what is the problem you're trying to solve. And we're such a productivity oriented society that we often just jump in really, really quickly and generate a bunch of activity without really spending the time and the energy, and it hurts. It'll make your brain hurt to just sit and roll around in what is the problem that I'm
Right.
trying to solve.
Hmm.
And that to me is the foundation of critical thinking. And then beyond that, being able to ask really smart questions is also critical thinking. I love leaders, and by leader I don't mean a person on an org chart that's at the top. By leader I just mean anyone proactive in their job. I love it when people have the confidence to ask a really smart question even though they don't know the answer to it.
Mm.
Because if you start with the smart question, you're really thinking critically, and then we'll later go figure out all the people that have to come together to answer the question you just asked.
Right.
But do the critical thinking to ask that really smart question first. And I love working in those environments with these young people who are coming up with all these new ideas, and they're breaking orthodoxies and they're testing assumptions. And I when I was hiring very actively in my corporate role, the number one thing I looked for was critical thinking.
Right. It seems like when you read a book about helping lead millennials and
Mhm.
when they hit the job market, that it seems like that's a concern from the baby boomers is that
Mhm.
millennials, they keep coming back. Well, what do I do about this? They want that assignment to be spelled out, and things don't go well.
Oh, interesting.
So I guess it's a
Yeah.
different.
You mean wanting more of the steps? Tell me the steps?
Well,
Or
that the boss wants them just take this and take care of it.
I see what
And
you
that
mean.
person is coming back with more and more questions. And what do I do
Oh,
about this? And like, what's the exact right answer?
that's interesting. The company I retired from was 75% millennial.
Hmm.
Huge,
Um,
huge personnel base of millennials. And I will tell you from having worked there that I think the future is in fabulous hands
hmm.
if it's going to be led by these amazing young people.
Because a lot of times they get a bad rap, right?
Yeah, yeah. But they're testing assumptions and breaking orthodoxies. And if 2020 is any indication, the older people don't have it figured out.
Hmm.
So I'm putting my bets on them.
Okay. Besides your occupation, what other roles do you play? What other hats do you wear?
I am not a mother. Sometimes people ask me if I have children. I do not have children, but I have a husband, and he and I have been together for over 30 years.
Hmm.
And I met him when he was 17 years old, and I asked him out on a date.
Sheesh.
Yeah, so and then here we are. So that's crazy.
Wow.
And I am a fabulous sister, and I am a wonderful daughter, and have a very, very close family. I'm very fortunate that way. In terms of hobbies, I love to lift weights, and I'm a terrible runner, but I run,
Hmm.
but not in any competitive way. And I garden with heirloom seeds. My father passed away and left me his heirloom seed collection, and I garden, and I just love to put something in the ground and then benefit from it at the kitchen table. And I have lots of failed experiments, don't get me wrong, but it's a chance to get exercise and get outside and get some vitamin D. But then I get to watch nature work its magic, and then we get to cook wonderful food. So it's a really fun hobby that allows me to combine a lot of interests
Hmm.
and cram it all into one hobby.
What
So
is
that
an
I
heir- what's an heirloom seed?
Oh, an heirloom seed would be something that has not been genetically modified.
Okay.
Yeah, so something that is more in its purest original form. And there's a whole community across the globe, but certainly across the US, of people who trade heirloom seeds.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so I'll give you my heirloom carrots if you give me your heirloom butter beans, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like a game of poker. Well, I'll raise
Yeah,
you
it's
too.
it's exactly what it is. And some of these things are pretty valuable too.
Jeez. Okay. Before my last question,
Yeah.
where should our listeners go for more information about you?
Okay, thank you for asking that. So, my business and my podcast are both called the Me Suite. And suite is spelled like executive suite or hotel suite, SUITE. So, the Me Suite podcast can be found on all podcast platforms, anywhere where you listen, and also on my website. And that's themesuite.com, but it has dashes. So, it's
Mhm.
the dash me dash suite.com. And you can, that's for the business. And my name is Donna Peters. If you Googled me there or on LinkedIn, you can find me in lots of places, and I would love to hear from you.
That's great. Have you found any social media platforms to be more helpful to get your word out than others?
Definitely for me as a career coach, LinkedIn is my main uh, relevant target audience because they are career people. Most of my content and interviews are with career minded people. Or people who are asking provocative questions about where they are in their career. So LinkedIn for me is definitely the most active platform. And then the podcast has been very interesting because that has been attracting people just graduating from undergrad to people that are, should I retire next year or not?
Mm.
So I have not been able to give you a real clear answer on the podcast demographic. I just think it's been fascinating to find that people at all stages of their career are finding relevance there. And I'm really, really, really gratitudinous about it and flattered.
Hmm. Just briefly, what is your process for LinkedIn? Do you have a balance of when you're contributing, when you're posting?
Oh, that's a smart question. I have a rhythm. I rotate. I am either posting my own podcast on a day or posting a written blog on a day or sharing other people's content.
Hmm.
So I rotate.
Okay. We'll have to check out your LinkedIn to see your system that's working for you.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. I know from listening to your outstanding podcasts, the Me Suite, that you end each interview with a sweetener, which is a final
Oh,
piece of advice from your guest to help your listeners build a Me Suite mindset.
yeah.
So, what is your sweetener for my listeners?
Oh, thank you. You're singing my song, Mr. Music Therapist. My sweetener is I believe that WE, is almost always the most accurate way that something got accomplished. Not I, but we.
Mm.
And very, very rarely is it just you alone that it takes other people to have helped you accomplish what you've accomplished. And I would leave a sweetener with your listeners to think about a few people in your life who are really, really responsible for helping you achieve what you wanted to achieve, or maybe they helped you through a trough and you need to thank them, and handwrite them a thank you note. That would be my sweetener. There is nothing more powerful than you writing it and them receiving it.
Mm.
And I like to challenge people to get really, really practical. And what can I do differently on Monday? And that would be identify 3 people you owe a note to and write thank you notes.
That's great. Well, Donna, I could talk to you all day.
Me too. I've had a blast.
Yeah, well, let's just keep the live stream on. You can help with the kids and.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's going to be a little hard, but I'm in.
So thank you very much for being on the podcast, Donna.
Thank you very much. And I love what you're doing with all the hats we wear. I love the premise.
Mm-hmm.
And I was attracted to it immediately. So thank you for letting us share each other's stories.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Welcome to the All the Hats We Wear podcast. This show will teach you the time management skills you need to be joyful, productive, and fulfilled in all areas of life. I believe if we want a fulfilling life, we must identify all the hats we wear, then turn each role into a beautiful work of art. This is episode 30, and I'm your host, life coach and productivity expert, Scott Snow. We have a special guest today. Donna Peters is a recognized executive coach, speaker, and workshop leader with over 20 years advising senior executives and next-generation leaders at the world's most admired companies. She acted professionally on stage, film, and stand-up for 10 years before pursuing an MBA and becoming a senior partner and practice leader at a premier consulting firm. Donna is career-oriented and life-minded. She helps us balance aspirations with practicality to lead our lives with more purpose, planning, and power. You're meant to do great things. If you want to be an innovator and visionary, you have to manage your busy life like one. The All the Hats We Wear planner is the planner for the future. I want to give you a free month of the planner to try out for yourself. Nothing will slip through the cracks anymore. When you use the All the Hats We Wear planner, you'll have everything you need at your fingertips. All of your goals, a vision statement, a list of daily habits, and a checklist to track your progress. Key information for the small and large projects on your plate. Daily sheets to clarify your top outcomes for each day. A week at a glance section to plan for the coming weeks, and much more. The All the Hats We Wear planner will be your roadmap to a more joyful, productive, and fulfilling life. To claim your free month so you can see for yourself how it will streamline your busy life, visit allthehatswewear.com. You're meant to do great things. If you want to be an innovator and visionary, you have to manage your busy life like one. The All the Hats We Wear planner is the planner for the future. I want to give you a free month of the planner to try out for yourself. Nothing will slip through the cracks anymore. When you use the All the Hats We Wear planner, you'll have everything you need at your fingertips. All of your goals, a vision statement, a list of daily habits, and a checklist to track your progress. Key information for the small and large projects on your plate. Daily sheets to clarify your top outcomes for each day. A week at a glance section to plan for the coming weeks, and much more. The All the Hats We Wear planner will be your roadmap to a more joyful, productive, and fulfilling life. To claim your free month so you can see for yourself how it will streamline your busy life, visit allthehatswewear.com.